No wonder we have had a historic number of retirements among law enforcement officers and more difficulty than ever recruiting to the force. Compensate our police and sheriffs, state agencies, and prosecutors to enforce our laws and protect our communities. The opioid continues to devastate U.S. communities, fueled by fentanyl smuggled into the country, which is killing our kids and making cartels filthy rich. What people don't realize is that it isn't just our fellow officers along the border who are managing the fallout of the president's failed and fallen policies. Our state and locals in every community across the country are dealing with drug and human trafficking, violent crime, and murders every single day. You all are the last line of defense against the lawlessness that threatens to tear our community and our country. More time must be done. I want to thank Hoover City Police Chief Nick Durgis, Coleman County Sheriff Matt Gentry, and Chief Counsel of Alabama Attorney General Catherine Robinson for traveling to Washington, D.C. to participate in this event. I also want to thank Dean Keeter, former Executive Director of President Trump's Commission on Law Enforcement and the Administration of Justice, as well as Chad Wolf, former Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, and Pam Bondi, former Attorney General for the state of Florida, for joining this conversation. Finally, I want to thank my colleagues, Senators Marsha Blackburn, Rick Scott, Katie Britt, and Eric Schmidt, who is also the former Attorney General from Missouri, honoring these law enforcement officers. So, Senator Scott, I'll let you give your opening remarks and we'll move from there.
Well, I want to thank Senator Tuberville for putting this together. I think the most important thing we can do is always support law enforcement. If you think about our states, nobody wants to build a business in the area that they deem as dangerous. Nobody wants to send their kids to school if they don't believe they're going to come home. And nobody wants to buy a house in a bad neighborhood. I'll tie a great law enforcement. I want to recognize Attorney General Bobby. We both got elected together. I remember I was before back in 2010, we had working together as governor, and she was a strong. She has a family relationship with our state law enforcement, our 66 sheriffs, and our police chiefs all across the state. She was active in a variety of areas, including human trafficking, and just did a great job. And we work with Chad, who was running. I just think we would be in better shape if Chad was there today. I just did a panel last week in Florida, talking with police chiefs and sheriffs, talking about the number of people dying of fentanyl overdose. 76,000, I think it was, this last fall. And they're dealing with it all across our state, and I think every state in this country. So it's great to thank our law enforcement. They're the key to all of our prosperity, and I want to thank again for putting this together.
Well, thank you, Senator Tuberville, for doing this and bringing us all together. And thank you to all the law enforcement officers that are here and also that are watching. We are grateful for your service. I had the opportunity on Monday of this week to be with our sheriff's department, and there we dedicated a bridge to a fallen law enforcement officer. And it was so insightful to have conversations with these officers that are a part of the sheriff's department and also highway patrol, police departments that were there. And one of the things that they brought up to me was their concern over having and retain law enforcement, the impact that is having, and resignations are up across the country as much as 47% since 2018. And as we talk about safety and security, and as we pause and commemorate Police Week and say thank you for that, we need to realize the importance of making certain that the focus is on funding, not defunding our law enforcement community, making certain that your work environment is a safe space. So thank you, Senator Tuberville.
Thank you. Blackburn, Senator, Rick.
Thank you so much, Senator Tuberville, for hosting this discussion, especially during National Police Week. It's great to have so many law enforcement officers around our country here in Washington. Truly, I want to say thank you to the familiar faces that I see here at the end of the work that you all do in the state of Alabama, and that is an honor to stand Shen Yun. I know that we're going to speak of a number of important issues today, whether it's the fentanyl crisis or the rise of violent crime or the disaster at our southern border. And I want to have there is no better than hardworking men and women in law enforcement. They see these things, challenges face to face every single day. I also want to say thank you for leaving the safety of your home every day so that we can do ours. I want you to know that I believe that we've got to work diligently. We not only support you, but that we will work forward in this Congress and beyond, that making sure you're the best trained, equipped, and ready across the country. I also wanted to stay as ranking member of the Homeland Security Subcommittee there under continuing to make sure that we keep our community safe by the top priority of mine. I'm proud to work with so many of my colleagues here in the Senate, certainly all of the distinguished members here on this panel, to courageously stand with our courageous law enforcement officers and always back the blue. So I look forward to continuing to partner together, and I appreciate the opportunity.
And last but not least, former Attorney General of Tri-State Missouri, Senator Eric Smith.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks for putting this together. It's an honor to be with so many friends who share I think the same issue, which is to support our men and women in this work. As with Pam, served as Attorney General in Missouri, and you got to see firsthand just the dedication every day, the sacrifice. Going when there was an officer shot, and the instances when that happened, passed away, I tried to make a point of either getting to the hospital, being with the families, making the phone call, and to a person, family members understood the dangers, certainly the individuals understood the dangers, but wanted to serve their communities. And I think that especially in this place that we live in right now, with some people where there's a tremendous amount of disrespect, I think it's important for us to always be verbalizing the respect that we have for men and women in law enforcement, how important it is. Literally kind of holding society together in really dangerous times. And so I just want to acknowledge that. From that previous role of serving as the chief law enforcement officer in my state and coming to the Senate now, certainly working with my colleagues, sponsor legislation that I think matters, and doing everything we can in finding ways, I think, to break down the barriers that kind of separate different agencies and the work that they do for their company. So I just want to, on this really important meeting for your capital, thank each and every one of you, and men and women, again, with the uniform, who are running into danger and everybody else is going in the opposite direction. Just thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you. And former Attorney General from the great state of Florida, and
Thank you, Senator, and thank you so much for putting together this great panel. Every police week, I always talk about my friend. When I was a prosecutor, his name was Ricky Childers. He's a homicide detective killed in the line of early morning. He was his partner. Randy Bell headed out on a call and gunned down by a violent felon many years ago. And since then, we've all lost many friends. Living. And there's no ordinary day in the life of a police officer. I'm watching the spouses of those homicide detectives who were killed, and all friends. And Senator Scott, thank you for your friendship and your unwavering support for law enforcement. We've been to way too many funerals together, haven't we? And that's why it's so important that we honor these great men. I have the honor right now of introducing Catherine Robertson, who is the Chief Counsel to my dear friend, Attorney General Steve Marshall of Alabama. She is the Chief Counsel to Steve Marshall, and she previously worked for Jeff Sessions as his legislative counsel when he was a U.S. Senator, and on the Senate Judiciary Committee, also for justice.
Thanks so much. I would like to brag on our state when it comes to policing and public safety. Like many states, Alabama went through a phase of being pretty soft on crime. I started about 10 years ago, crime was down, and we really got complacent. We were conversations back about crime or about the offender. Everything was reform, which is the code word for easy. And in about 2019, we were confronted with the harsh reality of that kind of thinking. Our really lenient parole board let out a manual violence track record, committed a triple homicide. We had 7 police officers murdered in 13 month period. And it's hard to believe we were making national headlines for atrocious violent crime. But a 3-year-old kidnapped in Birmingham, a young college girl was abducted and murdered. And honestly, really scary. And to the credit of my boss and to our lawmakers, the good news is that Alabama really responded. We recognize that as a state we've lost sight of that civil right of every Alabama, really every American, is to be free from the fear of violence. And so we got to work. So I'd like to just run through a couple of our accomplishments. Our state the last 5 years has enacted our prisons are now work. We have spent capital appeals so that worst crimes no longer wait 30 years for justice. We have restructured our parole board. We have a law enforcement officer. We have harsher penalties for gang violence. We have given without bail and just expanded our ability to prosecute child pornography. So I would say we reacted pretty decisively. We did it quickly, and we did it usually with bipartisan support. I'd also like to just note one other unique facet of Alabama law, which is that our state attorney general has statewide original jurisdiction to any crime in our state and to take over any prosecution in our state. That is a tool that any conservative state needs, because there is really no use in this notorious funding DA races when the state attorney general has the power to do whatever needs to be done. And that's why we've had a lot of success in Alabama with our DA races funding. Our goal is to raise the standard of what our state is willing to tolerate when it comes to crime, and then I think our people have decided that we don't want to tolerate that. So I'm grateful to the incredible partners in the state that we work with, and I think it's a really good presentation. Thank you guys.
Now I have the honor of introducing Chief of Police Nick Durgis of Hoover, Alabama. The chief, you've been chief since 2005, and prior to that, you were assistant chief of police. And he has also created many initiatives within the department, such as special response team, school resource officer program, which is huge, development and construction of a new police operations center and a jail facility. Thank you, Chief, for your unwavering service.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to address you this afternoon. I'm honored to be here during Police Week to recognize and tribute to those officers who paid the ultimate sacrifice to keep our community safe. Each work is inherently dangerous, respond to serious and stressful incidents, and we see serious injury and death. In the past, police officers' wellness was determined by the physical fitness. Now our profession recognizes the important role that wellness plays in someone's overall health. Departments and wellness to identify risk factors so they can be addressed. 10 years ago, we hired a behavioral health coordinator for our department. We work with our employees to provide on-site counseling services for critical incidents. It also works with our citizens for issues related to mental health. Requesting a law enforcement officer to respond by phone in person to the scene There's reasonable cause to believe the person is mentally ill, is likely to be a danger to self or others. This position is already proved crucial to our department. Having a staff person who can facilitate communication between family, hospitals, probate court, and can use his knowledge to determine next course of action. We also have a veterans liaison volunteer group that has sent police officers to perform service members. These officers can respond to a call from the shift or be called out and we determine veteran prices. We also have 4,500 veterans residing in our city. Liaison officers require to attend training, get installation, crisis intervention, mental illness awareness, policy law. We also work very closely with our local community. Mental wellness is a concern for us, not only for our employees, but our veterans and our community members. We know our employees are our biggest asset. They cannot get wellness. We must continue to provide services that assist employees with their well-being. All of our communities benefit when officers.
And Chief, I understand you have a question for Senator Scott.
Scott, our nation has been facing an opioid crisis for over 10 years. Time period of just 3 years, 2021 through 23. Over 300,000 people died of drug overdose. And of course, the deaths are due to federal. What new strategies does the federal government enact to bolster local and state law enforcement efforts? This tells us the majority of fentanyl coming into our country comes from Mexico. Recognize that we not have to. What policies do we expect in the near future to eliminate the from Mexico?
I'd like to say that we have a president and a majority in the Senate that everything will get done. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I just did my third roundtable. Their labs are dealing with it every day. As soon as I got like we saw new strains come in, down the lab down in Sarasota County, and tell me what was happening. So the first thing we ought to do is secure borders. The most simple thing we ought to be doing. It's what Chad tried to do when he was at Homeland Security, unfortunately. And the next thing we do is stop buying anything from China. They're the ones killing them. They're just the three purchases to kill over 70,000 Americans every year who will buy anybody from China. We need to pass logical legislation that would be helpful. Support everybody on senators here. We passed legislation that said that our Border Patrol is going to update their interdiction guidelines, which is going to help them. I've got a bill that everybody up here supported that we're going to extend the waters that are Coast can go into positive is passed the House. Unfortunately, I think all of us have worked out for legislation that would force the Biden administration to secure the border, where they're trying to tie Ukraine aid to a variety of bills that are basically, force the Biden administration to do it. Of course, the position we're in right now is we have a White House and we have a majority Senate that is open, board. So, unfortunately, you guys are going to deal with it on the front lines. You're going to deal with one, the devastation of families in every city and county in this country. That's number one. Number two, the risk.
I'd like to answer that if I could just a second. I know our police chiefs in Alabama, several of them told me that they had never heard the word fentanyl until 2020. It was heroin, meth, cocaine, marijuana, but there was no fentanyl. Now, this is by far the biggest drug in our state of Alabama. We're losing lives every day. So I just like to add anybody else comment on that?
Yeah, Senator Scott, thank you for fighting the opioid crisis for all of the drug abuse throughout our state when you were governor. And now all of you great senators continue on. If I could add one thing, I always do a public service message on fentanyl for parents. Never, ever let your child, anyone you know, take anything, even if it's a Tylenol. Senator Scott and I have seen too many people who thought they were taking Adderall, Xanax. They buy it on the street, it's laced with fentanyl, and they go up dead instantly.
There was in 2021, a young man came over there with Mother's Day, and his friend gave him his internet that I did. I know when he was the Attorney General, he was constantly trying to have check, constantly change regulations to try to deal with the new precursors that comes constantly. It's ever getting there every place. My poor grandkids, every time I see them, I tell them it scares the crap out of you, because one mistake, you're dead. I've had 6 grandsons and granddaughters, I don't want to lose.
And I think it's important to remember that a lot of these precursors almost exclusively come from China to Mexico across that border. So when we talk about the southern border, we talk about the open nature of that southern border. That requires that here down to Americans of this unit. So the two are mutual together. I'm not sure that is out there enough. We talk a lot, I see a lot in the press about fentanyl overdoses, the importance of making sure you're educating folks, but it originates again in China, across that border. Keep that in mind as well.
That's crazy. All the power in China, even President President Z has never asked him about fentanyl. Never asked him. I guess they're not concerned that they need to get out of the real world to understand what's going on.
Our law enforcement officers are also exposed to it because they are our first responders. And Sheriff Matt Gentry from Coleman County, Alabama, he's been sheriff since 2015. The sheriff started his career with the Coleman County Sheriff's Office in '99. He found his niche in drug enforcement, so he's well aware of this. And also the district attorney's office investigator assigned to the DK task force in Birmingham. So, Sheriff.
Thank you. Senators, I just want to thank you on behalf of all the sheriffs in Alabama for allowing me to hear you talk about the issues that we're facing. You know, one of the biggest issues we're facing is when I go back to a liberal administration in the 2008, 2010 anti-law enforcement way, well, those kids that heard that are our young girls today. So we're seeing a decrease in wanting to get in law enforcement, and we're losing leadership and patriotism. You know, over the years, I've been blessed to see many things. One of the things I'm blessed with in Coleman County is I have a strong prosecutor, our district attorney, Shen Yun strong law enforcement, and putting bad guys in jail, which is a hard job. I had a unique opportunity in May of last year to go to the border. I went to the border with Alabama, and I got the unique advantage of being a president and a liberal media that will lie to what we are facing. And you say, well, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is open borders, and really, it's what the sheriffs and the police chiefs are facing down there. It's not women and kids. The biggest thing that we're seeing is millions of men, 18 to 25, that are crossing borders every day. You're talking about millions. Well, most of them have very violent backgrounds. What they are seeing is Asian, Somalians, and Chinese nationals coming across, committing violent crimes in the state of Texas and other states. And guess what? That's moving to other states. And you think, well, how does it affect local law enforcement? This is the thing. We're going to deal with it first. We're going to deal with the drugs that are coming across the border. We're going to deal with the violence that they're inflicting on people in their homes. And so it's really a time for law enforcement, especially local law enforcement, because with them having to open borders, we have a president that does not care about our country. It takes law enforcement standing together with our citizens to be a voice. I want you to know, senators, from all the sheriffs in Alabama, that we will always stand with you, and we will not give them an inch when they reform in our communities. So I just want you to know you have our support, and we'll be there standing shoulder to shoulder with you.
I want to make a point. I agree on this recruitment challenge. When I was in my job, I was asked a question one time. I had not been a lot of volunteers before that, which I guess is not that unusual sometimes. But
was what is the accused of the night? And for me, it was all the men and women who will never, we don't know who they are, we'll never know who they are, who will never go into law enforcement, who might have, because of the culture that has been created by this defund the police movement in the state where I'm from, in St. Louis. She's no longer there, but there was a Soros prosecutor, Kim Gardner. It was a total disaster. And not just her inability or unwillingness to bad guys. It had a trickle down effect on law enforcement. Police officers was a demoralization, right? They were working a case to bring to a prosecutor, and the prosecutor didn't want to do it, turned it away. That has an impact. There was an incident where they showed up at 2 in the morning and broke up a fight, went to a car that looked suspicious, saw a gun, tried to get the gun away. There was the guy was shot, the bad guy was shot, and the next morning in the paper, her comment was, well, I don't know what they were doing, the police officers were doing there at 2 in the morning. I mean, this is like, so residents feel unsafe, police officers and sheriffs are undermined when you don't have prosecutors who actually want to do their job, because the world needs a lot of social workers, but there's only one prosecutor in that city, and if that person doesn't want to do the job, so again, I think that's why it's really important to support the men and women who protect us, because not just for them, but I think that that the people who might be looking for that career need more of them, other support.
Senator. And Sharon, you have a question, I understand, for Senator Tuberville.
I do, Coach. One of the things that we're seeing is rising crime in urban areas, which get a lot of media attention. However, the crime wave hasn't stopped there. We're also getting our rural communities throughout Alabama. One of the things, what can the federal government do to support law enforcement through federal funding? And given the anti-police movement, what can we do to ensure that our federal funding opportunities aren't jeopardized by politics?
First of all, every member of federal government, especially is law enforcement. We got Senator Britt and I got at least $20 million worth of federal funding sent back to the state from 28 different agencies. But the main thing is, it's not just rural, as you said, it has to go out on the rural precinct. State outcome. And we have as much mental illness, we have as much drugs, we have as much theft, human trafficking in the rural areas as we have urban areas. And so that you overlook. And it's even harder as you go to sheriff, how many miles is your county?
We're close to 9 miles.
So how many deputies do you have?
I currently have a little over 100 sworn deputies.
When I was campaigning, it's hard, very hard. One thing I like to say this is we've got to put respect back to our law enforcement from the people that they serve. I think we're losing respect from a lot of people, from parents, and that goes on to their kids. We've got to put respect, kind of like being a football coach. You lose respect from the players, you're done. Same thing if you're in law enforcement. If people lose respect for their law enforcement has a tough time catching back. The problem with that is we have to back the law enforcement. They have to be given the ability to be funded, have the training, and do things that they need to do in urban and rural areas to do this all work. But it's a community affair. One thing that I've noticed since I've been here 3.5 years, we continue to lose our streets, our communities, we lose our country as we know. There's no doubt about that. And it's going south. We don't have enough law enforcement people, we don't have enough support for them, enough training, enough money involved in that. But it's got to come from the federal government in the state. So thank you, Sheriff.
And Senator, you made a great point about the trafficking. People don't understand when we say every state is a border state now. Every state is the drug trafficking. I'll tell you in a little while, everything is flowing right through the border. I'm going to go off a little bit because Senator Blackburn had the vote and just do it. And Catherine, I think you have a question for Senator Blackburn.
Yeah, as I said, we were just talking about the important partnerships between prosecutors and law enforcement and also one thing we've been concerned about is this new policy about Attorney Garland. Back at the end of, I think, 2022, he sent out a memo to the attorneys across the country, directing them away from the department's long-standing policy of charging for serious threatening. And we weren't really sure what that meant. 2 years later, we can definitely feel there's been a little bit of a pullback. I'm just curious. I know you're a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, that policy and sort of study your consequences.
Oh, indeed, we're trying to examine that policy. And as you can imagine, Senate Judiciary under Tuberville's leadership does not examine that policy. But as you mentioned, 2 years of this, what you're beginning to see is what is yielded in city after city after city. I simply refer to those soft crime. Whether they are going below the recommended minimums on these sentences, or whether it is this policy of no cash bail. I have gotten so concerned about that policy. We look no further than Memphis, Tennessee, with what this address was. And Coach, I know you know Memphis as well. Last year, Memphis crime stats were atrocious. When you look at their murder rate, it is 6%, 22 to 23. And when you have a city that has 400 homicides for the year, when you look at the fact that with juvenile crime, they had 500 juvenile criminal charges in the year. I applaud the leadership in Memphis, both in the city, the county, saying we have got to get our arms around this. You practice it with the DA. They campaigned on soft on crime, and then implemented these soft on crime policies, not using cash bail, and going for leniency, and allowing people to get out while they were awaiting trial. This is something that when you have violent crime in a state, this is something the citizens of Shelby County and Memphis talk so much about. And I did a telephone town hall last night, and Shelby County and Davidson County, which is Nashville, were on the call. And you were talking about the every state border. I want you to know most of the calls, most of the callers are asking questions of us. It dealt with the border, the impact of drugs, human trafficking, crime in community. Shelby County repeatedly, caller after caller, would say, thank you for trying to do something about crime. We've got a couple of pieces of legislation. I've got to keep violent criminals off the street, which deals with reinstituting cash bail. And those policies requiring these violent criminals. I have a bipartisan piece, the After School Act, that deals with that window of time in the afternoon until 6 o'clock in the afternoon when kids commit crimes. And we've got that we're pushing forward. And Senator Haggerty and I this week have reintroduced our Tuberville Act. And that is direct grants to law enforcement being able to hire and train more officers so that you have more working on this violent crime and drug crimes.
Senator, thank you. And that time, that bill is so important because that time between 3 and 6 is also the time these kids get recruited into gangs.
That's right.
When they're not home. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dean Keeler. Dean is formerly of the ATF and Department of Justice, and was President Trump's Executive Director of the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and the Administration of Justice at the Department of Justice. While serving in this role, he oversaw the first comprehensive review of the criminal justice system for more than 50 years. Dean was previously Chief of Intergovernmental Affairs at ATF.
Thank you, AG Body. I appreciate it. Senator Tuberville, thank you for the kind invitation to join me this afternoon and putting on this roundtable. Today, Peace Officer Memorial Day, is an especially important day in law enforcement. Your commemoration of the fallen honors their sacrifice, and our discussion today about crime in America is what we want us to move forward and speak for the secure nation. As AG Body said, I was co-working with the Justice Department. Aside from the singular privilege of working for AG Bar, while I was at the department, I was blessed to have the opportunity to meet President Trump's on law enforcement. The monumental effort of examining the totality of the criminal justice system, the first effort in more than 50 years, revealed a fundamentally sound system, which is still the best in the world, with honorable men and women working every day on behalf of victims and in the name of justice. Over the course of 12 short months, we lived in law enforcement, courts, corrections, prosecution, defense, technology, training, recruiting and retention, officer health, wellness, and safety, and we examined community relations. In fact, police and community relations dominated the Commission's deliberation. Not only did we work in the midst of COVID-19, but we also worked through the summer of massive civil unrest across the country. The release of the Commission's report coincided with the transition of administrations, and it's more than 150 recommendations was not seriously reviewed, let alone adopted. That's very unfortunate, because if you ask any one of our commissioners, they'll tell you that there is something for everybody in the commission. One area that the commission focused on was use of technology in law enforcement. As you know, technology can be immense. With the right application, it can quickly help identify and find the perpetrator. And just as quickly, it can exonerate the innocent. When law enforcement looks to solve crimes and help the victims of crime, technology is important in several ways. For example, extracting all the evidence at a shooting scene requires the comprehensive use of ATS to identify criminal shooters and crime victims. It also requires the employment of rapid DNA to identify criminal suspects within 90 minutes, well before a laboratory sample will ever be returned. Law enforcement also needs advanced threat identification and detection equipment to know when deputies and officers are dealing with fentanyl and the associated anomalies, and they need enhanced forensic capabilities. Crime becomes increasingly concealed by end-to-end encryption. The attacks of 9/11 demonstrated the need for interoperable and reliable communications, and that's why further thinking next generation 911 systems, along with advanced mapping and dispatching software, are critically important for law enforcement. Law enforcement can also use emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, advanced weapons detection systems, counter-UAS technology, to keep us safe where we live and work. All this is possible because of advanced training that employs virtual reality and augmented reality, enabling officers and deputies perfectly trained from their time academy all the way through their career. Law enforcement has been my passion in my career, and it's privilege to support the men and women within the blue line who protect us and serve us as public safety professionals. Every law enforcement officer makes sacrifices for people they don't even know. And our Peace Officer Memorial Day let us never forget those who have made people concerned. I want to thank you so much for granted and for inviting me to participate. It's an honor to sit alongside this. Thank you today.
And thank you for your many, many years of service to our country. And I understand you have a question for my friend Senator Schmidt.
I do. Senator, as it is talk about technology, law enforcement around the country last month, the federal department helped them understand resources that would be unavailable to them. Criminals have gotten up because of the lack of communication between partners. Could you shed a little light on how the federal government might be able to support state and locals and improve access to digital technology and crime?
Yeah, thank you. And I would be remiss not to point out that humanity is like a legend. And in the AG world, when I was coming in, like, she still set a standard. Whether it was working with victims, no. I know, like, whether it was working with victims, the opioid crisis, human trafficking, and it just took the lead on some. I think a big piece of that is training, but these joint task forces that exist, I think that helps break down some of the barriers that often separate even some federal agencies, certainly roles,
And I guess I would point to people. One is, I think part of this just takes leadership. Get people who want to go do these things and have a collaborative environment within law enforcement. And I think it starts with having a victim-centric mindset. As was mentioned earlier, so much of the attention by the so-called performers has to do with people being by the crowd. And I think it's very important for us to maintain focus on the families that they've gone through. We did, and also the heroes, we instituted something called back a little more, that we would go around the state and honor police officers or sheriffs who not just did things that might be in the newspaper, but we're sponsoring a kids' lemonades and highlight the important work that they're doing and humanize the people who are doing this work. So I think some of that's leadership, but also human trafficking. We had coordinated among, I think it was like 14 different offices, the largest human trafficking bust at the time in the U.S. I mentioned those joint task forces. Clearing the backlog of sexual assault kits. We were able to do that in Missouri, take the lead. I was leveraging technology, not overwhelming the highway patrol in our state that had that lab, but going outside and thinking outside the box a little bit and contracting with private to help clear that backlog. And there were a lot of federal partners along the way. But one of the things I think I'm most proud of that I think is a good guidepost, but also a sign of how the Biden administration has gone straight. When I was in during the Trump administration, we partnered with the Safer Streets Initiative. It was the first of its kind initiative where we lent assistant AGs from our office to the U.S. Attorney's Office, Trump Point U.S. So like in St. Louis or in Kansas City, when those local prosecutors were doing their jobs, we were able to get prosecutions and convictions of people, whether it was on carjackings or unlawful possession of a firearm, whatever those were. Again, that was hadn't done before. There was a lot of trust there, and then when Joe Biden came to office, that's what happened to his attorneys, which is insane to me. It should be a totally nonpartisan issue prosecuted by the crime, but somehow became part of the Democrats' identity, which is being soft on crime. So appreciate the work that you've done. And I think what this boils down to is just a one we confront these challenges head on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you now for fighting for our entire country. Coach, when you were putting this great panel together, you knew that the common denominator here was not only protecting our law enforcement from all the perils, but it has to do with the border. And that's why our dear friend and our next guest, Tuberville, former acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. You have to be here today really for this. Chad was acting secretary of Homeland Security under President Trump, and during his time at DHS, he navigated numerous global and domestic challenges, including COVID-19, civil unrest, numerous border and immigration crises, and historic natural disasters. And Chad, you also oversaw the most secure U.S. border in our history. Thank you for being here.
Okay. Senator Tuberville, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's great to be on a panel with not only great members of Congress and senators, but with law enforcement professionals. I'm DHS. I had the opportunity to interact and lead a number of them. So it's good to be today. Police Week is a time for all of us to remember that the officers that died and killed in the line of duty the year prior, and we're grateful for their sacrifice. A lot of folks don't realize the Department of Homeland Security is the largest federal law enforcement agency in the nation. Over 85,000 law enforcement officers. When I had the honor of serving as acting secretary, I also had the opportunity to meet with hundreds of them from all over the country. And despite their various missions, as well as not only DHS law enforcement officers that we partnered with, despite their various missions, we share one thing in common. That's a desire to simply do their job and enforce the laws that protect our communities, and to do so with honor, unimpeded by politics or unnecessary bureaucracy. We talk a lot about border security. We talk about today is national security. And the reality is that what we fail to do in securing our border directly impacts the safety of our communities. So whether you're looking at national security threats that are crossing that border every day, the unprecedented amounts of fentanyl being smuggled, hundreds of thousands of children that are being trafficked at the hands of cartels, public safety threats, all of it impacts our community. None of it stays at the border. Border communities alone are not impacted by what's going on there. So never was this more evident than with the tragic murder of Lincoln Riley, allegedly at the hands of the people in Georgia. Her death was entirely preventable, made possible by misguided policies that elevated social justice over common sense public safety. Those policies endanger public safety, but they make the job of our law enforcement community that much more difficult. We can and we must do more to support our law enforcement community. And at the very least, we must empower them and support them so that they can simply and as safely as possible do their jobs each and every day, go home to their family each and every day. But simply, as I know we all agree here, we must continue that.
That's right. Thank you, Chad, for your dedication to our country and your continued dedication as Executive Director of America First Policy Institute. We continue to support the America First principle. I'm blessed to be sharing our work with you today. And I understand you have a question for Brent.
I do. Senator Brent, you are the sponsor of the Lincoln Riley Act here in the Senate, which obviously, as you know, requires ICE to arrest illegal aliens who commit certain crimes, but most importantly, detaining them until they can be reported. I certainly understand how important it is the safety of our community during their time as acting secretary. I think unfortunately a lot of members of the general public probably weren't paying attention a lot to this issue prior to Lincoln's unfortunate death. And I think that's an opportunity for us. So clearly there are some very real world implications for local law enforcement not partnering and not working with federal law enforcement. So I'd love to, talk a little bit more about your views on this topic, obviously the importance of legislation that you sponsored, but other actions that perhaps Congress would have to address this issue.
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for your service. We're certainly proud to introduce Lincoln Act alongside Senator Ted Budd from North Carolina, and we want to talk about the importance of that and why we need it. But before that, kind of getting to the overview of today and the complete disastrous policies. No one should believe President Biden that he is serious about security border. And there are a number of things that we can point to. First of all, when he put forth his budget proposal this year, he actually had a 2% decrease to the Department of Homeland Security. Now we know that the Department of Homeland Security, to your point earlier, is obviously the most important thing in keeping our homeland safe, whether it's our Border Patrol agents, whether it's TSA, whether it's Coast Guard, maintenance. That represented about a $1.25 billion decrease in the department's budget and his proposal. Now, you would say, okay, well, we need to save money because our national debt was $34.5 trillion debt. Let's start cutting. Absolutely, I would agree. But that's not what he did. He put money where he places value. And so while he had a 2% increase in Department of Homeland Security, he increased EPA by 19%, almost 20% actually. Absolutely, totally ridiculous. When you're looking too at fentanyl, talk about that leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45 in this check. He didn't have any new funding for non-intrusive equipment at the border. We know, as you said earlier, where this is coming from China, makes its way to Mexico across our border. Infiltrating every community across our country and the great state of Alabama. No new money for that, and only marginal increases when it came to actually counter fentanyl, staffing, labs, technology. Completely and totally unacceptable. This administration is not serious about solving the problem. And then earlier, as we talked about human trafficking, if you look back at 2018, human trafficking was a $500 million business. Now, under Joe Biden, $13 billion industry. So the facts are not on your side, and that's why we got to get this back under control. When it comes to the Lincoln Riley Act, the Lincoln Riley Act, very similar to Sarah's law, actually requires us to detain these illegal migrants that come here. And commit these various crimes, detain until they can be deported. That is step one. Step two, it gives our states the opportunity to actually hold open border federal officials accountable for not enforcing our nation's immigration laws. We all know that we're a nation of immigrants, we're all a nation of laws, and those laws need to be enforced for safety and security of Americans all across the country. And then third thing that we need to do, obviously, as Congress has been so many, is cut off funding streams to sanctuary cities. If you say that you are not going to go home, federal officials, you're not going to enforce the laws on the books, you're not going to work with ICE when you have these things happen. I mean, you look at what happened to Lady Carly and her alleged murderer that both in let go of NYPD custody, not detained by ICE, and then in Georgia, the citation here for shoplifting, and again, let go. If the Biden administration was courageous enough to actually enforce the law, I believe that Brownie would still be alive. And so this piece of legislation pushes that forward. So I think we got to continue to work on all of those avenues and continue to work to push this piece of legislation. It has recently come to partisan. What happened? Happy to have people from the other side of the aisle. If they want to see the light, we're happy to welcome to it. And I hope that more and more Democrats will get on board the politics aside and actually put safety and security of Americans first. A couple of things that I also think that we need to do. You look at Senator Cornyn's Act, the Blue Act. You look at Senator Braun's Thin Blue Line Act. These are things that not only show our courageous law enforcement officers that we stand shoulder to shoulder with you, also send a message to Americans that says we have your back. And so making sure that we push those is extremely important. And the last but not least, something that I'd like to mention is I'm really proud of this group of senators for standing up and saying that's enough when it comes to the crime-ridden policies or soft-on crime policies we see here in our nation's capital. You should feel safe and welcome here. But to earlier points that we've seen, the people who sit on the city council, the mayor herself, want to prioritize left-wing agenda over safety and security. Children who want to see the nation's capital and witness history. And so we push back on that successfully. I think we need to continue to do that in Congress. Make sure that voice is heard. Make sure that this is the nation's capital, where everyone can come safe and secure. We just got to get back to prioritizing the rights and safety of hard-working people who sent us here, and not those criminals who want to do them harm. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for fighting for our country and also the here for her family. One thing that also is so important, we can fight to keep these illegal aliens in jail where they belong, but we also have to have prosecutors who are going to keep them there. And even in these conservative states, Florida, we have local prosecutors. That's all I can think to call them. Right, Senator Schmidt, who are letting people out. They should be running a public defender, not state attorney. And that's a big problem still in this country. And we've got to fight good law. It's not conservative or liberal. It's people who are going to follow the law, who are going to back the blue, and protect our citizens and protect our police officers. So with that, are there any other final thoughts from our panel?
I'd like to ask a question, Sheriff, and anybody who can answer this, and please, but something a couple weeks ago, early 1900s, we had less than 180 people in this country, but we had 500,000 people that were being worked with in facilities, 500,000 out of 90 million mental illness. Today we have 330 million people. We only have 30,000 people that are being worked with at mental illness. What the heck? We've tripled almost the number of people, but we have less people that are being treated for illness, and we all know it is a bad problem. I know you deal with it, Sheriff, your comments on that, how many you see, your crime problem in terms of the mental illness?
It's extremely high. Just as an example, so we average about 75,000 calls for service a year in Baldwin County. Our deputies are responding to 3 either suicidal or homicidal calls every day. And the problem is the funding's being cut. We don't have facilities to take them to get treatment, but our mental health is on the rise, and it's something that we face every day, day in and day out. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in a barricaded standoff with a guy that had some mental illness issues. And it worked out well the way it should. But at the end of the day, our deputies are responding to just people, 3 suicidal, homicidal calls a day. And you wonder why people don't want to get in law enforcement. You wonder why young men and women avoid that service.
I would say the majority of the mental illness calls we deal with all stem from strung out. You know, we've had, again, I spoke earlier, I talked about having a staff member of critical incidents and so forth. It's helped us because in the past, we've got police officers out here dealing with people with mental illness. All of a sudden, they don't know really what to do. They don't have the connections to go to call hospitals that for 72 hours for evaluation purposes and so forth. So that's really helped us. But like the sheriff said, we deal with those things again every day, and most of the steps from drug use.
That you had, you deal with boards there. Our understanding of prisons and everything, sending cases up there, probably a lot of mental illness coming into our country. Did you see that when you were working on that security?
What I certainly saw were a number of public safety threats. It's obviously mental individuals, but it's other bad individuals as well. And so I think if you just look at the metrics and the numbers coming across that border, it used to be 2/3 were coming from either Mexico or Central America, primarily 3 countries in Central America. But by then, that has now flipped. 2/3 of individuals crossing that border from all other parts of the world, South America, Haiti, and others. The thing what that tells you is that other countries are either not policing their individuals and are allowing these individuals to make that dangerous journey, and/or a lot of these countries, we do apprehend them and pick them up here. They are not taking their individuals back. Their nationals are not allowing their national patriot to be reported to other countries. So I think that also tells you something.
I'd like to add, obviously, Senator Tuberville's point. Chad, under President Trump's leadership, he had the most secure border program, and we see what happened in this administration. Comes in first 100 days, and Biden does 94 executive orders, says we're going to stop all the importations, we're going to halt for all, millions. This acts as a magnet. These policies act as a magnet for these people to come here. And maybe you can see in discussions about potentially looking to secure the border that President Biden is not willing to give up the direction to abuse and create these criticisms. One would be if you look at presidential parole authorities. So President Trump paroled on average 5,600 people into the country, 5,600 people a year. As in the Judiciary Committee here, you saw Senator Brown explain that this president, President Biden, is actually paroling 1 million people a year into this. And you look at that abuse of that parole authority, and to your point about people who are Chad, and also you look at Lincoln Riley's alleged murderer. So many of these people are being paroled in this nation without proper vetting. And when you look at the numbers that were given from, the number of terrorists that call the border, what is it, like 57 known terrorists have been called at the border, and that isn't even, 57 restrictions 11, and that's not even including the 1.8 million highways. We don't know who they are, where they're going, or what their intentions are. And then we leave those to law enforcement officers and every community to deal with. So really, it's time for change. Back in place that actually works.
Real quick on the asylum piece, I think it's really important, Senator. I think what this administration is doing is obviously it's an unlawful use of the parole authorities. I think once it gets fully litigated, that will be very evident. What they're not telling the American people is that they are putting people on parole because they know they will never call. And so when you come in on parole, they have 2 years of authorization immediately for asylum proceedings. They know this, and so the Congress, the American people, the country are going to have based in 2 years when all these individuals come up for parole renewal. What happens to them? I think that's counting on either extending their parole for another 2 years, or you're going to have another class of undocumented individuals in the country that we're going to be discussing what to do.
I showed this as an example of how radical this policy is. At the end of President Trump's term, he instituted something called Operation Talon, which was an effort to deport previously convicted sex offenders. And Joe Biden covered it. Like, there's a lot of things we disagree on in this country, but I would think we could come together, Republicans and Democrats, and we should probably deport previously convicted sex offenders who are here illegally, but evidently that was pushed far in this country.
Senator Reid, I'm going to add something to what you're talking about. Well, last year in May, when we went to the border, you want to talk about something that breaks your heart. Wait till you see people that are getting caught coming across the border illegally, given court date 5 years out, and then say, where do you want to go in the U.S.? We will fly you anywhere you want to go. It doesn't matter where you come from, your background, and that is how bad the Biden administration is failing. I mean, we are buying plane tickets to ship illegals anywhere they want to go and give them a court date 5 years out.
What we used to say at the department, which I'm sure other law enforcement officers still do, is that federal government's that last link in that huge smuggling chain. Because once they make that very dangerous journey to come across or traffic across that border by the cartel members, they interact with DHS law enforcement and released, and then they are trafficked or they're sponsored to get that last link in that huge smuggling chain to the location in Atlanta, Cincinnati, wherever they may go. And oftentimes it's to work off their debt that they have to pay the cartels to get across that border.
Well, we're running out of time, and I want to thank everybody for being here. I think it's consensus that when you lose your streets, when you lose your borders, you don't have a country. We're very close to that. And it has no, there's no factor that blames anybody other than the Biden administration. Our law enforcement tries, they're being underfunded. Our border is wide open by design, and there's nobody trying to do anything. And people are dying every day, unfortunately. But that's the reason I'm a Trump fan, and he will close the border. Shadow to do that. And you can make this non-political or whatever. We don't close it, we're going to lose the country. And it's not going to be the same if all of us had an opportunity to grow again. So thanks for everybody being here, and hopefully people watching online have an opportunity to get something out of this. But this has been good, very informative. Areas, local, city, border patrol, attorney generals. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for leading this conference. Thank you again to all the senators. Thank you very much.